Hello, rugby fans. I'm Joe Harrington of Flo Rugby. With me, as always, is our man in the UK, Philip Bindon. Usually, I come to you at the beautiful offices in Austin, Texas, but today I'm at the home offices here in North Austin because you know what? It snowed. Well, I guess it did snow. It froze all the roads here in Texas. And Philip, when it freezes like that in Texas, like pretty much everything shuts down because we're just not built for it. We're built for a lot of things in Texas. Uh, Ice and freezing degree weather, not one of them. So here we are, shut down. I got the daycare center going on downstairs. Wife and I are tag teaming this week. And you know what? We might just try to watch some rugby today because I have watched the Pixar Disney film Cars about 30 times since Friday afternoon. So I think maybe we have to throw on, I'm thinking maybe some Claremont rugby games, maybe some racing rugby games. That's right. I signed with him, Philip. Anywho, we're staying warm here. How are you doing over there in the UK?
Yeah, all good, thank you, Joe. We don't have snow at the moment, but we got a lot of flooding where I live. So we've had serious downpours for the last 2 days, and yeah, so fairly limited on our movements on this side of the Atlantic too. But all good, thank you. All good. I think the storm did start in the US and worked its way across here, so it's been yeah, pretty full on. But yeah, really looking forward to chatting some rugby with you. There was obviously some great action across all our major leagues this weekend. So yeah, buzzing to chat about it.
Yeah, let's get it going. This is the rundown for the podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about round 10 of the URC and Prem and round 15 of top 14. Uh, Prem, the Gallagher Prem, that is, they're on hiatus. They're not going to be coming back until late March. That's like
Hmm.
2 months. But a lot of those players are going to be playing in the Six Nations, and those not in the Six Nations are going to be making the Rugby Cup, the Prem Cup that'll be going on at the same time. We're also going to preview rounds 11 and 16 in the URC and top 14. Philip, we're going to talk a little Super Rugby today. So get on the Superman cape because that's what we're doing. And then, of course, we're going to continue with our guest, Ryan Ellis. He'll come in at the end of the pod and we will talk about possibly the favorites to win the Six Nations, England, and possibly the favorite to get the wooden spoon in Wales. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
two ends of the
Um,
spectrum there.
all right, so here we go. Domestically speaking, let's get to it. Biggest match in club rugby last week was probably, I don't even think it was close. It was Toulouse and Poe. That was number one, number two in top 14.
Hmm.
And oh brother, did Toulouse say, "Oh, you are not ready." They crushed them. That was surgical there. Philip, what was your takeaway of that match?
Yeah, I think it was that kind of building on from the thumping of Sale Sharks the week before by Toulouse. I think it was a real show of force by the Toulouse team, and I think it does prove really when push comes to shove, the gap is Toulouse and UBB, and then everybody else in the top 14 at the moment. Because Poe were very good coming into it in second position, but really you only test yourself when you do play against a fully locked and loaded Toulouse who rather scarily still have players to come back from injury. You think of Ange Capuazzo with his broken finger. There's obviously no one Cruz Malia there. And, they still absolutely shredded Pove. So I would say for anyone in the Champions Cup and the top 14, watch out because Toulouse are far from done. And they're only going to get better as the weather gets better and Anton Dupont gets more into the flow of being back at full-time rugby. So my biggest takeaway is that yeah, Toulouse for me are favourites in both competitions once again.
Let me ask you this though. You mentioned UBB. Okay, they lost at home this week,
I know.
so
Yeah.
that was a bit of a rotated squad, but that squad still had Penaud on the lineup there.
Mm.
It's not like they sent out like their C team out there. Are you a little worried about Bordeaux, or is this just random coming off Champions Cup? They look so good, whatever.
I
Or
yeah,
does this say more about Francois?
Yeah. It's. I think. Well, yeah. Stade Francais for me they're such a funny club. It's good one year, bad one year, good one year, bad one year. They're really funny like that at the moment. But for me, UBB, yes, I'm worried because they're dropping points and it's always a challenge. And really they're not going to catch Toulouse at the top of the table. But when UBB are on form and they have their full squad out there, we've seen what they can do to teams. What they did to the Northampton Saints, for example, is a prime example of that. Damien Penaud, obviously the disappointment of being left out of the French squad was there, so that's an interesting one. But I do think when fully locked and loaded, I just think they're the only team at the moment who have the firepower to go toe to toe with Toulouse in a big knockout match. And I would be pretty confident that they will be there when it's all said and done. I think they're obviously trying to manage resources at the moment. They're going to have a lot of players, and they do have a lot of players in that French squad, so that's always a challenge for them. But yeah, I mean, Stade Francais for me are really good. But again, I think when you're talking about ceilings of teams, I think Stade Francais' ceiling is not as high as a full strength UBB or a full strength Stade Toulousain at the moment. But the top 14 is wild, so you never know.
Well, let me ask you this, because we didn't really talk about it in the pod that much last week. Pinot is not on the French team. What
Hmm.
what was up with that? That seemed like a shocker to me. I mean, that's a player that I think we had in our top 10 players in the world rankings last year.
Yeah, and he's no worse, and he's in good form. It was just, I think it was firmly Fabien Galthie saying November was not acceptable. What happened? And it wasn't. It's not only Penaud. There's also no Gregory Aldrit, and there's no Gael Ficou, who are three key leaders for France. Both Ficou and Aldrit have captained France before, so I think it really is Galtier saying, "Look, nobody is safe in this France squad. We're trying to get building towards this next Rugby World Cup. Unless your name is Antoine Dupont, you are droppable." So I fully suspect that with the way the Six Nations goes, there will be injuries. I fully suspect that you will see Damien Penaud in the French jersey in the Six Nations. I would love to see Gael Ficou get two more caps to make that 100, because if any player from France over the last 10 years deserves 100 caps, Gael Ficou is there. And I think Gregory Aldrit will be thereabouts again, but France have so much depth in the back row that he's facing an uphill battle. But I do think he's quite unique in that he is a specialist eighth man, and I don't think France have a specialist eighth man at the moment, which is very different to playing on the flank. The responsibilities at scrum time in particular, or at line out time, are very different for a number eight than they are for a six or a seven. So I think it all depends how that evening in Paris plays out on the opening night, because if they lose to a very injury struck and out of form Irish team, alarm bells will go, and Galtier's experiment will backfire. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it seems almost like a desperate move for Gaultier. Like this is like
yeah.
he knows that his job's on the line in the Six Nations, and
Mm.
he's trying to shake things up by doing some desperate roster move. But that's my read on it. This is a
Yeah.
this is a really big gamble for the French coach.
Yeah, I completely agree that in no world should this French team not be, real contenders for Grand Slams every season. And in reality, Ireland have performed better than them over the past 5 years, generally speaking, for with a much smaller pool of players. And England are coming force, as we've spoken about there. I think they're going to be very, very tough to beat this season. So I think Galtier is under a lot of pressure, and rightly so. You bomb out of your own World Cup at the quarterfinals when you were heavy favourites going into the tournament. It's not good enough, especially with the squad he had. It was not good enough. Sure, it was a 1 point loss to the eventual champion Springboks, but that everything was building towards 2023, and I don't think there's as much emphasis on 2027 for obvious reasons, that they're not the tournament hosts. So the opportunity to replace Galtier at the end of the Six Nations is very live, in my opinion. And everything I've read out of L'Equipe, and which is a French media outlet, that's really good. Rugby Rama, I think Galtier is under a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Moving over to the Prem real quick. This past weekend, Quinn's Tigers sailed Northampton. Those were kind of the bigger matches there. What were your takeaway from this round as basically action stops for 2 months in the Gallagher Prem?
Yeah, I think the Quins result in particular gives me 2 points. One, it proves how far off La Rochelle are, because Quins went over and they won pretty comfortably. And two, it just points that Quins, for all their talent, have a soft underbelly, and that shows with inconsistency. If someone really takes it to them up front and stunts them there, it just kills off their really exciting back line and back rows opportunity to get going. So I think Quins are really in trouble. I think I was just thinking about the Saracens game. I saw a very funny meme on Reddit earlier where it was a video of American Dad where I think that like squid alien guy hit American Dad, and then American Dad just absolutely clobbered him. So it was like Newcastle 7-0 and then Saracens 74-7 or whatever it was. I think the Prem is going to be really interesting in the run-in, isn't it? You know, Joe, because there's at the moment it's hard to see a perfect team. We thought Bath are that, and Bath have proven that they can be, but they were struggling against Gloucester. And listen, they were a heavily rotated Bath team, and they did win in the end. But the gap is so tight between these teams, and it makes such a great competition. You know, I love watching the Prem. I mean, I'm first and foremost a URC fan, given I follow Munster, but I love flicking on the Prem on the weekend and watching what's going on there. I think when we spoke, Joe, probably towards the end of November, wasn't it? Early December, we said this is really Bath's to lose. When you look at it, and the Saints are right there as the next best. But actually, would you back any team from not having a bad day? I don't think you would at this stage.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't be betting on anyone winning this championship. I mean, the big thing is when I was looking at it, the gap between like the obviously 4 teams make the playoffs, right? And the gap between the 3rd team and the 6th team is like, it's like 4 or 5 points. And then of course there's a big drop off. To me, we talked about the Quins. They're looking for a coach, right? They're looking for a head coach, and the Champions Cup showed us that this team has a lot of talent. This team 100%. Finished what? They're going to host a Champions Cup game. And they're not even going to finish in the top 9 of the Prem, it looks like right now. Man, if I'm Scott Robertson, you said it last week, man. If I'm Scott Robertson, I'm saying I think I could do a really good job with this team that plays in Twickenham Stoop and has a really good talent.
Yeah, I have it on really good authority, Joe, from a source I trust a lot, that they have made contact with Scott Robertson. So that would be absolutely fascinating. Another name is obviously Ronan O'Gara, because things have become a little bit stale at La Rochelle. So there are some big names floating around for that job. And as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, Harlequins is arguably the best job in the Premiership, just based on location, the playing base that they've got there, the fan base that they've got there's phenomenal, stadium's brilliant, the opportunities commercially are massive, and they've got a very, very bright team on that side of things in terms of the business side of things. So if I was looking for a job as a top line coach, Quins would be right up at the top of the list for me. And it's a fan base crying out for consistent success, because again, at their best, as you've just said there, Joe, at their best, Quins can beat anyone in the Prem, and as they've proven, they can probably beat most people in the Champions Cup. So having someone like Scott Robertson with his cultural identity with them for a full season, jeepers, watch out! I think they could be a real opportunity. The only thing I would say about Quins, and I've been really impressed in particular with Luke Northmore, their centre, I do think they're lacking a real heavy hitter like Andre Esterhazen when he left to go back to the Sharks. I think for someone like Marcus Smith, just having a monster inside centre takes so much pressure off, because if there's not good ball, he just gets you over that gay line, set up another ruck, and then Marcus can play from there. And Finn Baxter's injury is a big blow for them too. So yeah, I think this season it should be all in. Let's see how far we go in the Champions Cup, because the Prem is gone for them at this stage.
Well, all I can say is you can break dance in England just as well as you can break dance in New Zealand, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. To set up not only the recap of last round in the URC, but also looking at this round, I have a question to you, Philip. My question to you is this. Are the Vodacom Bulls back?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Bulls are back. I don't mean that with any disrespect, but as someone who grew up in Cape Town who liked the Stormers, I cannot stand the Bulls. I do think they're back. The only thing is they've given themselves too much work to really get a good seeding, so they'll be on the road in the knockout stages, and I don't think they're good enough to beat a fully locked and loaded Leinster or Glasgow. I think they would struggle against a fully locked and loaded Munster, even though Munster's fallen off a little bit. Or Ulster on the road for that matter. I think they're back in the sense that I think they'll be firmly in the top 8 when it's all said and done, but I don't see them as title contenders this season, no.
Well, that's what I mean, because they were so far out of the Champions Cup race. To make the Champions Cup in the URC, you got to finish in the top 8, and they're not in it right now. I think they're still ninth table.
But they have got a game in hand, Joe. They have got a game in hand over the Ospreys, because obviously they had that delayed start to the season. So a win there, and then they're right back in it, aren't they?
Yeah, and they lost 7 matches in a row, and now they've won 2 in a row, including a win. I mean, we can spend an entire hour about what's going on with Poe. Like, are they good? Are they bad? Are they lucky? Yeah. Who knows? But they did beat Poe in France, and that's really hard to win in the Pyrenees right there. And now they go into Edinburgh in Scotland, a place that is notoriously hard to win, and they pick up a win there. So pretty impressive for the Bulls. And this is my segue here, because there were some interesting matches in the last round. Your boys in Munster, there's something funky going on there. But we can talk about that in a second. But I want to talk about the Bulls because we have quite the interesting, great match this week. We don't talk about the Lions all that much, and yet they're in the top 8 on the table. They beat the Bulls earlier this season. They're hosting them. What's your favorite memory about this rivalry? I'm not even going to try to pronounce the nickname for this derby. I'll leave that to you. But, history stacked up against the Lions in this. They don't beat them very often. But I'm excited for this match because these are going to be 2 teams that are going to send their A teams out there, and it's in Ellis Park in Johannesburg.
Yeah, Transjonski, I think Jonski, in Gauteng. It's a really interesting matchup, and the Lions for me they've been there or thereabouts when you watch them last season too. They are building quite nicely. They're starting to get more and more Springboks. Obviously, they lost Edward van der Merwe in the last off season, but Boan Venter has signed from Edinburgh for them next year, which is huge. And you think of Quan Horn and Morne van den Berg and players like that, they're all Springboks now. So they have plenty of quality. And when we talk about unlimited potential, the Lions, again, are like that for me. When we talked about Harlequins before, the Lions are from Johannesburg, right? So Johannesburg and Pretoria, and it's huge population, huge amount of wealth. And there's real opportunities. I would love to see them not playing at Ellis Park because it looks ridiculous playing in such a big stadium. So I know there's been talks for years about it, that there is a very viable opportunity for them to move and have their own stadium, which would be great. That rivalry is really interesting. The Bulls are the big brother. Make no mistake about it. In terms of success, the Bulls are miles ahead of the Lions and always have been. And actually, it's interesting when we talk about the Bulls, when we circle back to them, Joe. I think what was interesting is obviously, again, with Munster, for example, Munster started really strong with a new coach and they're dipping off now. The Bulls did the opposite. They started really, really slow with Johan Ackermann, but they start to seem a little bit more comfortable in the system, and that's why they're looking so good. And you think about players like Andre Pollard, Willie Leroux, guys who've been there, done that before, Marcel Coetzee. They've got so much quality that really, if you were to put just the squads laid out and organize them in top Trump style, the Bulls were always going to be in your top 8, weren't they? I mean, they were really, that quality-wise, they should be in the top 4, but I think that's where the difference is between them and the Lions, but in terms of just pure name power. But I do think the Lions have the ability to knock the Bulls over again, just because of the brand of rugby they play. They've got plenty of physicality in the pack, but it's the way they play a nice all-court brand of rugby is really interesting. I think they could stretch the Bulls here. Personally, I do think the Bulls win, but I think it'll be a really, really interesting matchup between 2 teams who clearly don't like each other.
How much did that kind of embarrassing loss against Bristol and pull forward the Investec Champions Cup wake up the Bulls? Because really, I would say if you restarted that match the second half at 0-0, I think the Bulls probably win. Because they played so much better. They got down so early. They've been a really different team after that. And, obviously going on the road twice and picking up big wins.
Mm.
Feels like that Bristol loss was kind of the turning point for this team.
Yeah, I completely agree there, Joe. I think the biggest thing is that what's been so impressive about the Poe and Edinburgh performances was the defense, wasn't it? That Bristol game was just a bit of a joke. I don't think they believed that Bristol could sustain that effort for a full 80 minutes. And they were slipping off tackles. And to be fair, all season their defense had been really poor. But the last two games they've really fronted up physically. I mean, they limited Edinburgh to 17 points at home, and difficult conditions. They limited Poe pretty heavily, and won the match. If you remember that Poe match, thinking back on it now, I think they defended about 20 plus phases before. I think it was Jandre Rudolph won the turnover. That's a real sign of a team that actually, they're fighting for each other and their defense is back on point. Defense is interesting because a lot of people think defense is the easier thing to get right, and sometimes it is, but defensive systems are there's attack coaches all over the URC that look at defensive systems and pluck them apart. You think about Leinster's hard blitz. Every attack coach has a game plan to get around it. Not every attack can do it. I don't know whether the Bulls were kind of caught between a hard blitz and a bit of a passive spacing defense, but at the moment they look like they're hitting more of a hard blitz, and it seems to be really working for them. And it does often work when you have a really big forward pack to have that backline shooting out and trying to stop the attack there and then, rather than going through lots of phases. So for me, I think there's been a bit of a shift in mindset defensively for the Bulls, which has been really impressive.
Yeah, we go to South Africa, and now we're going to move back up to Europe to talk about the next game that I'm really excited about this week, and that is I don't know what the Welsh club rosters are going to look like, especially for Cardiff, but I know that Ulster Cardiff game sets up as one of the best games that we've had all year in the URC.
Yeah.
If the A teams play, which I don't think the A teams will be in this match because I know Cardiff will lose a lot of players. Ulster won't be in as bad a shape. That's a really big match.
They will this time. Yeah, they will this time because they've also got players with the A team. So even if they've got quite a few players with Ireland, but with the Ireland A, which is the second team who are playing England A, they'll be missing quite a few players there too, Joe. So it's interesting to see who will get picked where. But yeah, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. It was just an interesting...
Oh no, well you're the Irish insider. Cut me off like a pair of scissors. I don't care. It just, to me, it seems like that's a big sign for Ulster as just a club development that they are losing players to the internationals. I think that's 100%. A great sign for them. I mean, I think that this match, though, is going to be a really good one, and I have the edge to Ulster. I think they're going to win, but if you're just in a vacuum and you're looking at records and table placement, I mean, this is a really important match. Coming at a bad time this season for Cardiff, but a really important match for both clubs.
Yeah, completely agree. And Ulster have had a terrible time with the Welsh clubs this season. You think, obviously, what happened at Scarlets last time out, where, they concede that late try to Ellis Mee, which they should never concede that try. It was just a comedy of errors that led to it, with, starting with Werner Koch's penalty concession and ending with Mee racing through, breaking through an easy tackle. And when you think back to when they played in the Challenge Cup, Ulster had a two score lead going into the final. I think it was like final 10 minutes, and somehow conspired to lose away to Cardiff. So I think Richie Murphy will be firing up his troops to go, we cannot allow that to happen again. And I don't think they do. I agree with you. I think Ulster win because the game is in Belfast, and for Ulster, another loss really puts them under a lot of pressure for any chance of the top four. Cardiff, obviously a similar sort of thing. It puts them under a bit of pressure, but I think Cardiff are, in my opinion, probably slightly overachieving at this stage. They've been one of the surprise packages of this year, as are Ulster, I guess. But I think Ulster have enough when you think about the players they have knocking about still, even with those Irish call-ups. You got the likes of Angus Bell there, the Wallaby, and the young guys who are playing so well, Zach Ward, Bryn Ward, Jack Murphy's still going to be there at 10. So they will certainly be down a lot of players, and I would assume Cardiff will be down quite a lot of players too. So I think Ulster have a little bit more squad depth than Cardiff at this stage.
Does Munster have a real shot at beating Glasgow this week? Mainly because I think Glasgow will be missing quite a few players. Munster, not as many players as you would think are probably in the international team. I mean, this seems like this could be this could be the match that Glasgow actually loses at home, right?
Yeah, Munster have a better chance without both teams having their first team. I think is probably fair to say. I would still probably back Glasgow just from what I've seen from their second string players compared to what I've seen from the Munster second string players. But I was so excited as a Munster fan watching our young back row of Sean Adogbo, Ruan Quinn, and Brian Gleeson. I think that's the future, and I do think that they will be pushing to start in the back row going forward. And Gavin Coombs coming off the bench last week, scoring 2 tries, was phenomenal. Personally, I see Coombs' future in the second row. He's 6'6", and he just the way he plays, I think, is actually better suited to the second row than the back row. So I think you will see this week there will be a lot of changes in terms of how Clayton McMillan wants to set up his team. The big concern I have with Munster is without Craig Casey and without Jack Crowley in particular, we have a massive drop off in terms of the quality of our halfbacks, and it's pretty concerning because Tony Butler hasn't been back, JJ Hanrahan's past his best, and neither of the nines and Paddy Patterson or Ethan Coughlin are great. So I would still lean towards a Glasgow win at home just because of how tough it is to win at Scotstoun. That, like, you say it every time we talk about the Warriors. It's one of the hardest places to go in Europe, as Toulouse learned earlier. But if we are going to get Glasgow, I'd rather get Glasgow without all their best players and just see where we get to. I think a losing bonus point would be a good result for Munster here.
Across these 3 leagues, well, I guess across top 14 and URC this week, you are the expert on young players, prospects. We're making our top prospects list is going to come out pretty soon. You're putting the finishing touches on it. Of these, outside of some of the obvious names, like who are some of the young players you're really excited to watch this week that are going to get opportunities to play that haven't gotten a lot of opportunities with the main club yet?
Yes, I mean, from a Munster perspective, that back row of Adogbo, Quinn, and Gleeson for me are mightily exciting. I'm really hoping Evan O'Connell gets a crack in the second row because I just think he is exactly what Irish rugby as a whole is crying out for as a line-out expert. And actually, I was so impressed with what Sean Adogbo did at line-out times. So from a Munster perspective, those 3, and I'm hoping Ben O'Connor gets another crack, and I hope he gets a crack at fullback because I think that's his best position. If I'm looking at Glasgow, Ben Ashfar, the scrum half is uber exciting up there. But again, Glasgow give away so many players to the national team that you really are dropping back down in terms of who you're looking at on that side of things. They've got a lot of exciting players across the board, but Ashfar for me is really good. Leinster's always exciting to look at. I know Niall Smith made his debut and had a relatively tough time away to Connacht, the tight head prop, but he's very highly touted as a key potential player for Ireland and Leinster over the coming years. In terms of Connacht, Billy Bohan, but he's gone up to the Irish team because we have lost our first 3 choice loose heads, which was always concerning going to Paris. And then in South Africa, they're all pretty locked and loaded. I'm really... If I was to pick one player from South Africa at the moment, Imad Khan, the scrum half at the Stormers, is a heck of a prospect for me. I think his name's Hashim Peed, who plays for the Lions, another scrum half. They've got a lot of talent there. So across the board, there's a lot of excitement. I'm hoping Cardiff will give Tom Bowen another crack, the winger. He's a Welsh international waiting for me. And not just because of his stature, but he really reminds me of Shane Williams, who's one of Welsh rugby's best ever players. So plenty of talent. I would say, if you're neutral in this league, it's probably almost more exciting watching it this week because you're going to be watching the next wave of talent from some of the biggest rugby nations in the world.
Yeah, so let's look at the schedule so people understand what's happening at the URC. They play this week, then the Six Nations starts next week. The URC is going to go on a bit of a hiatus. About a month. They'll return February 27th for round 12. So again, even that round is going to have quite a bit of young players playing. So bit of a break. We love the Six Nations. All the players that play in the URC, top 14 and Prem, like all the best players, they're going to be playing in the Six Nations. So if you're watching the Six Nations, which is on Peacock, not on Flo, you're going to want to subscribe to Flo Rugby so you can watch all these. But,
100%.
Philip, while the Six Nation plays, we look over to the Pacific. We got Japan Rugby League 1 chugging along there. Love that league. Stay up late. Watch it. but we're about to have another big old league in the Pacific start on February 13th. So, over the next couple weeks, Philip and I are going to be breaking down the 11-team Superman Rugby League that starts on February 13th. You can check out Flo Rugby's YouTube accounts for individual YouTube social accounts for individual breakdowns on some teams. We're going to look at all of them really quickly, but we're going to save some of the biggest narratives for this year on the podcast. And so obviously February 13th is going to come pretty quickly. That's almost 2 weeks away. Phil, the biggest thing you got to know for all of these is who's gone from the Super Rugby and who's back in Super Rugby. Now, we all know that Flo Rugby's number one player in the world is not in Super Rugby this year. He's still an All Black. They do what's called a sabbatical. He is over in Japan Rugby League One playing for the Kobe Steelers. That is Mr. Artie Sevilla. Did not get Scott Robertson fired. We made that clear last week. He played for Moana Pacifica and we gave him number one player of the year for what he did in the club season, because Moana Pacifica is a young club. Let's see, how can be really politely? They are a growing club. They did not have a lot of success before the number one player in the world came to them. But, Philip, the story here is in the Hurricanes when it comes to players who are back. You want to break that down for us?
Yeah, one of the biggest names in the world is back in Super Rugby. Of course, Jordi Barrett back from Leinster Rugby following yet another All Black sabbatical. Barrett instantly makes the Hurricanes a key contender, doesn't he, really, Joe? When you look at the other players they have in that squad, in particular Ruben Love, and how those two could link up as dual playmakers, I think the Canes are a real challenger this season. And we saw at times last season what they could do. I mean, they were blowing people out. I think the Brumbies took a heavy defeat to them, and they kind of knocked over a lot of the big teams. So Jordi Barrett's return is massive, key leader for them. Obviously, a very good goal kicker if they need it, and just a real leader for the Hurricanes. But when you look across the board at Super Rugby with the names who have come back and sort of moved around, there's a lot of really exciting transfers for sort of every team. I mean, Barrett's obviously the big one there, but when I'm looking at the Crusaders, for example, they've got Lester Faianga-Anuku coming back from Toulon, and he was so instrumental for the All Blacks over November and towards the end of the Rugby Championship. So I think he will instantly make a huge difference for the Satyrs once again, which is concerning for everybody else, given how good the Crusaders already are. So and if you're looking in Australia, Carter Gordon is back from Rugby League, and he's with the Queensland Reds, who now have himself and Tom Lina and Harry McPhillips, so three-way shootout for the 10 jersey. So lots and lots of exciting talent coming back to Super Rugby this season.
Yeah, I would say anytime that you can add Pita Akua to your lineup. I mean, that's somebody that was playing for Toulouse and winning top 14s and Champions Cup. Now he's back. He's going to be playing with the Blues, I believe, right? Back with the Blues.
Yeah. No, it's great to see. Yeah, and it's interesting. There was a lot of talk coming out of the Blues camp, in particular by their head coach, Fern Cotter, who's signed for the Queensland Reds from next season, which is very interesting as their head coach. But yeah, Pita Aki he was central to the Toulouse title-winning teams in the recent years. And what I think he brings is obviously he's still a very good player, but it's more that leadership, filling the void in particular left by Rico Ioane, who's away with Leinster on the All Black sabbatical. I feel like we've said that word so many times already, but I think Aki brings a really key leadership and actually brings an interesting sort of viewpoint from what is the best rugby club in the world in Toulouse. So, interesting to see him going back late in his career, and actually very exciting for the Blues. So, across the board, I just can't highlight how many good transfers there are in Super Rugby. I mean, the Brumbies, Tane Edmund going down from the Waratahs to be their 10 is really exciting, and there's also tons of Argentinians coming into the league, which is really exciting. None bigger than Thomas Lavanini, who signed for the Highlanders. So I think we're seeing a real resurgence of international interest in Super Rugby, which is only a good thing. I would love to see the Argentinian team, the Jaguares, get back into Super Rugby if that was ever viable again.
Let me ask you this. All right, so we're talking about transfer season, and we've talked about Scott Robertson before that. Is there a world in which one of the rumored candidates for the All Blacks team is Mr. Jamie Joseph, the Highlanders coach. Even though he only won 3 games last year, forget that. He's still going to be a qualifier because he was also the former head coach of Japan. If the Highlanders job opened, would that be a spot you could see Robertson go if he doesn't choose to go to Europe?
I think he has to leave New Zealand rugby after such a high profile sacking, unfortunately for him. And he's, obviously proud Canterbury Crusaders sort of man. I think the ship has sailed for Scott Robertson in Super Rugby, just at the moment, not forever. But I think if he ever wants to come back and maybe coach the All Blacks again or coach an international team, he has to go and prove himself in Europe, because that's what the All Blacks selectors, in terms of coach selectors, are going to be looking at going forward. And I think on the topic of Jamie Joseph, I think he's done enough to get that job. What he did with Japan was phenomenal, taking them to a quarterfinal in 2019, and he's coached all over the world. So I think he's the front runner for me with that All Blacks job. But I think on the topic of Robertson, I really think his best bet would be going to somewhere like Harlequins or Perpignan, the top 14, and building up a big program with 2 clubs that should be doing a lot better than they are.
The Chiefs made back-to-back Super Rugby finals. They didn't win them. They've got a lot of talent in Damien McKenzie. But they have a new coach, as you're well aware of, because their old coach is now is now coaching Munster, right? So, new coach there. What can you tell us about the Chiefs this year?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to be competitors again this season, and perhaps it is a case of, as you know, because you were making fun of your friends who are Steelers fans, there's a lot of coaches that take teams to they rise the floor of the teams and take them sort of to that doorstep of championships. You think of Mike McCarthy, obviously signing with the Steelers now, and actually when you look back on Mike Tomlin, it was the same thing of always getting winning seasons. Perhaps it was just the case that the Chiefs needed a new voice to get over the hump, because the amount of finals losses they had was just so heartbreaking. Because when you look at the quality of that squad, they are a title winning team, and they'll be in the mix again this season. I've no doubt about that. So perhaps it is just that they needed that new voice, and Clayton McMillan took them as far as he could, and they'll be contenders. Personally, I think when I look at it, I think the Blues will have a bit more of a bounce back again this season. I think the Crusaders are slightly ahead of them, but yeah, the Chiefs are going to be there or thereabouts, no doubt.
I am so excited to talk about next week's segment, because we're going to be talking about dark horses to win this. So I'm not going to spoil it, but my dark horse to win the Super Rugby is actually an Australian club that I'm really excited about. So, but that's to say, there are only 11 clubs in this league. We all know that they've lost some clubs in the past. Some clubs have folded. But okay, I have this is completely fantasy world, so don't take this seriously. But I've talked to Mark Flo, our CEO, and he said we're going to launch Flo Rugby Pacifica out in Super Rugby. We're going to join. We're going to have a club there, Philip. So let's do it. The 12th Super Rugby team. So we've done this before with Scotland. Number 1 pick in the fantasy draft here for our Super Rugby team. Does it change? Who's your player that you're picking? And then we've got to figure out where we're going to be.
Yeah, that's a good question, Joe. Jeepers. I think I would go with a Will Jordan as my first player, just because of like his try scoring record at Test Rugby and Super Rugby level is phenomenal. So if I was building a squad, I'd go around Will Jordan. He's still got plenty of good years ahead of him too. So Will Jordan's my pick. Who are you backing as your first player?
Oh, I mean, I want the fan base. I want to win a lot of games. I'm going with my guy Joe with the Wartals. You can say his last name. He's our number 25 ranked player.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Not going to pronounce it. You're not going to get me. That guy is awesome. I know that he plays in Australia, and we're trying to get that New Zealand audience. I get it, but no, He is my number one pick. 22. He's the number 25 ranked player in the world. We talk an awful lot about Sasha Montezuma in South Africa. This guy has just as much momentum behind him. He was so good in the rugby championship. He's my number one pick.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great pick, and actually, it's exactly the thinking Rugby Australia had when they signed him. And interestingly, they've signed two more of his Sydney Rooster teammates. With Mark Nwanganasi is coming back to rugby union, having obviously spent the last two seasons with the Rooster, or well, last season and this season with the Roosters. And Angus Crichton, who was a schoolboy rugby star and a former teammate of Joseph Suali'i, who'd been to a few of Suali'i's games and watched him live, he signed for them. So there's a lot of momentum with these top rugby league players coming across. So the landscape of Australian rugby could look very different in a couple of years' time. One name I'd love to see, and I've heard it being floated around, is Nathan Cleary. So if I'm allowed to pick a player who doesn't even play rugby union at the moment, Nathan Cleary would be my next pick of a player I would have there, and I'd put him straight in as my fly half.
Well, okay, so I've given this some thought. I think, the city that we're going to, we'll go with an island. We'll go with an American U.S. territory. We're gonna drop this. We're gonna drop this club in Guam. Beautiful
Lovely.
Guam. We're gonna put that. There's also America Samoa. That's another U.S. territory. That's where we're gonna be. Would be the first U.S. territory in Super Rugby there. Funny story. Back when I was in a newspaper, man, I used to work with the newspaper there in Guam. Back with the USA Today network. So like, there we go. Let's put a team right there. I have no
Yeah,
idea how
I
far
love
the
that you're always
flight from
thinking about
Guam.
the geo restrictions, Joe. It's so well done. We're getting Super Rugby across the board down there.
There we go. Flo Rugby Pacifica from Guam. There we go.
Love it.
Now we just need we need our amazing producer here, Elliot, to just get a map of like a Google shot of Guam on there so people know where it is. Because I'm not really sure how long of a flight from Guam to Australia and New Zealand is, but it could be like 10 hours because the Pacific is way bigger than what we all think. So um,
Yeah.
that is to say, that's what we're going to do. Next week, we'll talk about our dark horses to win and who we're picking as a preseason MVP of that league. Spoiler, probably going to go with the guy that plays for the Hurricanes. Uh, like I said, keep an eye on Flo Rugby socials. We're going to be dropping some team previews for them. We're going to be talking about the Drua and the Highlanders and the Moana Pacifica over the next couple weeks. And then we're going to get into the teams that made playoffs last year, some really good ones. I mean, Philip and I might have our annual debate of like, are the Crusaders the best club rugby team in the world historically, or can they like where do they rank along with Toulouse? We'll talk about that. But Philip, I'm excited about Super Rugby. I'm excited about February 13th and that coming, but we're also excited about next week and the Six Nations. We're going to bring on our guest, our guy, Ryan Ellis, right after this. And there he is, Ryan Ellis. He's here. We're talking about the Six Nations. We've got two teams we're focusing on. Last week, if you remember, we talked about France and Ireland. That's the big match in round one. Another match in round one, I won't call it all that big, is England and Wales. Now, let's talk about England rugby. Ryan Ellis, what are some of the things that you're most excited about England, who might be the favorite to win it all?
Yeah, I would say it's their best chance to win it since 2020, since their last title. I don't know that anyone is going to win the Grand Slam this year. Philip may have a different opinion about that, but I think it's England's best chance. I think they have continuity. They have a mix of young players, a mix of veterans. I think they'll miss Finn Smith in this first test, but I would be interested to see what Borthwick does with either George Ford or Marcus Smith, Maybe he puts Marcus Smith back at fullback. Maybe he trusts George Ford, the veteran, at instead of Marcus Smith. But and the other thing, this is my hot take. I believe that if England defeats Ireland on February 21st, that they will win the Six Nations this year.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you.
It's a good call.
I'm right there with you, Ryan. I mean, I think since I've been watching the Six Nations, this is definitely England's best team, and I love the mix of old and new on this team.
Yeah, I think that they're really interesting, aren't they? When you look at who Borthwick has gone for this time around, gents, like Joe's just kind of gone there. The gulf in terms of young players is pretty significant, but they do have a ton of players in that mid range between sort of 25 and 29, which is exactly sort of the sweet spot you want to be in 2 years out from a Rugby World Cup. Now, they do have a lot of old players that people kind of maybe underestimate when you look at the big names of sort of Ellis Genge, Maro Itoje, George Ford, Jamie George. They're all over 30, but really they're still young 30s, other than Jamie George, who's 35 and already announced he'll retire in 2027. So I think England have a really nice balance across their squad as they build towards 2027. The concern for them, but it's a concern for everybody, is the amount of injuries that have racked up, especially in their front row. For example, they've been hit with Finn Baxter is out, Asher Opoka for sure. Those are two of their really exciting young props are out. Will Stewart, the Bath tight head, got injured earlier this year. So there's going to be a real test of their depth this season. But there's just so much quality when you look across the board in that squad. So I think as far as an age profile goes, they've probably got the best one. Interestingly, Borthwick did go with the second smallest squad, so Italy selected less players than England. Everybody else has a couple more players. I know Ireland have one more player. I think Wales have two more. France have gotten jumbo size. They just seem to have picked anyone who plays top 14, bar Damien Penaud, Gael Ficou, and Gregory Aldridge. So,
yeah, barring three of the best players in the history of French rugby.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
but
Philip, do you think that that's him knowing that is he locked in, or can he add later as people come back from injury?
Yeah, so the way it'll work, Ryan, is it's very rare that you won't see changes throughout the Six Nations. So there will be players called up that I've no doubt about it. But I think the biggest area for him will be if he can get any of his sort of props fit and firing. That would be really important because, I mean, Joe Hayes is there, who's a brilliant prop. Trevor Davidson's the prop too. They're a little bit light in the front row. Ellis Genge is obviously is crucial to them. So if there was one area I could see them adding anyone who comes back as prop, but that goes across the board. I think Ireland and France would like to add a few more props from injury when that happens too. So, but I really like the look of this England squad. I do think if England France were playing tomorrow without seeing anything, I still think France win at home over this England team. I mean, they completely conspired to lose at Twickenham last year. It was the most ridiculous loss I've ever seen in an international team have, because they had so many opportunities to win it. And the other challenge the only caveat I have for England is they're pretty much the only top team who haven't played the Springboks yet, who, as we all know, is the benchmark in world rugby. And I do wonder, because we do get this with England from time to time, and I know as an Irishman this is going to be really unpopular opinion across English fans, but they love hyping themselves up. They really do.
I mean, and you want to talk about bring football home, like
it's coming home, isn't it, Ryan? And it's never going to come home.
I mean, but what can you tell me about these uncapped players like Billy Sala, because he's a prop, right? Do you think that Borthwick will actually use him?
I think he is the biggest prospect in English rugby at the moment, because Asher Opoka for Jure has already proven that he's an international quality. I really think Sela is going to be huge for them. He's only 20, but he is already built like a seasoned tight head prop. Now, props are really interesting. Historically, props are at their best after 30. So probably 30 to 32, 33 is their best window. It started getting a bit younger in recent years, but I would say maybe 29 to 33 are the prime years for a prop, injury providing. So the fact of what he's doing at 20 years old is quite frightening. I think he could be simply world class in 2 years' time at the next Rugby World Cup and could be their first choice. For me, Ellis Genge is arguably. I know South Africans will say otherwise because Oxniche for me is in his own league, is the number one loose head in the world. For me, Ellis Genge is probably next in line. And I just think he's such a phenomenal player. So having his experience there is huge for them. And I think a player like Sela is going to learn so much from just being around Ellis Genge in the Six Nations. The only caveat to having a really young team is that at times you do get a little bit of maybe growing pains, and that's the one area. If I know I said last week I don't see any area for Ireland to be better than France or England. The one area I do see that they could possibly lose out, both of those teams could lose out, is the lack of experience for France and England could come back to bite them a little bit if push comes to shove. But when you look at it, they do still have plenty of guys with a lot of caps, I guess. But I when the pressure does come on, young players at times have struggled. So that'll be interesting to see how they navigate that.
You know what I'm going to ask you, Philip? I'm going to ask you, at what point in the Six Nations are we going to see my guy Noah Kalari come up and play for England?
Yeah, I think the problem for Noah, Joe, is, and I know you're itching to have him there because not since you talked about Ian Etzebeth have I seen you this excited about a player. But I think the challenge for Noah is that he's in such a stacked position group when you look at what England have in terms of the back three. And it's hard to see who he beats out. The only thing I would say about that is the way that Borthwick really wants England to play and the way they were so good in November with their kicking game. He is built for that, isn't he? With his height, his ability to get up in the air and compete. So there's definitely potential there. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's been named in that England A team to play against that Ireland A team, or is it England 15, whatever they're calling them. So he's not far off, is he? He is there or thereabouts in terms of that cracking into that squad. But it's just when you look at the names that England have to call on, Caden Murley very rarely gets a game in there, and he's a really special talent on the wing, and Tommy Freeman's obviously phenomenal, and Faye Bosa, Henry Arundel. So there's a lot of names for young Noah to try and leapfrog to get any game time, I think.
My question is, when Noah is on here, does he score 6 tries in one game or 10 tries in one game?
Depends. Is he playing Wales or is he playing a real team?
Well, we joke, but he scored 5 tries in one game earlier this year.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Here's what I think. If England goes undefeated, they gain confidence. They end with France. That's the last game that will probably decide this year's Six Nations. I think they win it. I really do. I think that they're going in with the right attitude. They're starting with the right team to play. They're starting at home. It's a war of attrition with this too, and you get back players and you lose players. There's always the unexpected, but and France has to deal with that as well.
True. Again, Ryan, and I agree with you, and I know I said it last week too, that England for me are right there with France as title contenders. The only thing I have with them is at the moment is they beat the All Blacks at the end of a November series where the All Blacks have been beaten up, by Scotland, beaten up by Ireland. Like physically, I know they beat both of those teams, but physically they were broken by the time they got stricken. I'm not trying to take away from England because I think it was such an impressive performance. It's just we haven't seen this England team be punched in the mouth yet. And what happened last Six Nations, and people perhaps forget this because in the end they got the losing bonus point against Ireland, which is crucial. Ireland smashed them in that match, and they made it come back late to get the losing bonus point. How do they deal on the road against, France? There's an Irish team that have been written off here, and Scotland have had their number. I know they beat them last season, but Scotland have had their number too, and this is a good Scotland team. So it's a really open Six Nations for me. But I think just because of the way the draw fell with England having to go to France, I just think France deserve the opportunity to be favourites. But England, for me, I agree with you, are right there a second. And then I think you've got Ireland, and then Scotland is probably the pecking order that we're looking at the moment.
I love that the Irish media and Irish fans can write off Ireland, but no one else can write off Ireland.
Don't you dare talk about Ireland. Yeah. So, we're allowed to be as cynical as we want, Ryan.
Legacy watch here. in my opinion, we've talked about this in recent podcasts about Maro Itoje might be the most underrated. I don't want to say underappreciated because I think he's pretty appreciated, but most underrated when we talk about the DuPonts and the Kalen Dorrises and players like that, Artie Sevilla. But Maro Itoje, so good. 97 caps. So he's going to get to 100, likely, this one, barring injury. He's going to start all these matches. He's 31. The question to you is he going to break Ben Young's record of 127 caps for England?
Yeah, I think he will. Yeah, I think so, Joe. And for me, I just it drives me up the wall how much criticism Maro gets because he's been world class since about 20 years old. Now he had a dip, but it was by all accounts it was related to illness, and I don't really want to go into it because I don't know enough about it. But he's had such a career renaissance that I think a lot of people don't want to give him his due because he was phenomenal when he started his career. It was, I think, him and James Ryan both had this thing where I think in their first like 20 or 25 international matches for club and country they didn't lose, which is just insane when you think about it. And he was such a phenom when he burst onto the scene. He then obviously had that dip mid-career where we weren't sure whether he was ill or whether it was just a form thing, and he's come back so strong. I mean, he was the British and Irish Lions captain, on a winning series. And yes, they didn't play great rugby, and it was a weak Wallabies team, but that's something that you never get taken off you. And when you watch him in that Sarries against Toulouse game, he destroyed that Toulouse maul. Like he just ripped it to pieces, tore apart their line out. He is at the peak of his power, and he will be, in my opinion, barring injury, be England's captain at the Rugby World Cup, where I think they are very serious contenders in 2 years' time. So I think he gets an undue amount of criticism for how good he has been and how good of a leader he is. Yeah, I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, where do you think Borthwick puts Marcus Smith? Do you think he puts him at fullback? Do you think he puts him at fly half?
I think Marcus wears the number 23 shirt, in my opinion, Ryan. So covering that 10 and 15, because
Okay.
I'm pretty sure Borthwick will want to play a 6-2 bench split, so six forwards on the bench, just because he's got the likes of sort of Ben Earl and Guy Pepper and guys like that, and Henry Pollock. So Pollock and Earl could, at a stretch, cover the back line in terms of the centres of the wing at a real stretch. So I think Marcus gives him a lot of flexibility, and with George Ford fit again, I think that Ford gets the start. I mean, Borthwick loves Ford. I mean, it's his first choice 10, so I would love to see Marcus get a crack, at least one game starting in the 10 jersey, to see what he could do. But I think him bulk of his time will be on the bench in the final sort of 20 minutes, 25 minutes of matches.
That's right. We haven't talked about Henry Pollock, who is still just 21 years old and incredible. So,
Ridiculous. Yeah, he's like a
This
Tony
is
for me. People don't like him because of the personality, but
well, we've talked about that in a recent podcast. That the sport of rugby needs players like Pollock. They need the villain. They need someone that's going to be charismatic and do that. And boy, I think this is going to be a Six Nations coming out party for Henry Pollock.
I believe you had him number 100 on your best players. Just snuck in, and I wonder where you would put him now. But
oh yeah, he's in the top 25 somewhere. It's hard though because he's not a starter for England, which people kind of forget. You know, when he was in the running for World Breakout Player of the Year, sure, it's well deserved because he's a Lion and he's absolutely phenomenal, and he could well be England's starting 8 in this campaign because, you know, Tom Willis is signed for UBB, so he's not going to be eligible for England going forward, and Ben Earl is equally dynamic off the bench. So I think you could see Pollock get a lot of starts at 8 like he's been doing for Northampton. I think the challenge is until you're a consistent starter, it's really hard to rate you in the top 100 players, isn't it? It depends what your criteria is, but I think, I'd say he's in the top 25. But I don't want to give too much away here, Ryan.
All right. My last question on England before we move on to our other nation here. Last question to you, Philip. Ryan, you can tell me this too. At what point in this Six Nations do we get an English rugby media outlet firing Steve Borthwick?
Yeah,
We
I mean,
hope
it's,
for
if it
that.
hasn't already happened. Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
if it's not rugby, it's football. So like the Southgate was for English football was fired like 20 times before he was actually fired.
The band's coming off one of the best seasons in like England rugby in years, and of course he'll like lose and like he'll lose like the second match of the Six Nations because I don't think he's losing the first one, and then it'll just be like you gotta fire him. So excited for that.
Yeah, I think the
He
only way.
really he really just has to put the right players in the right place for this World Cup. The talent's there. It's as talented as they've been since 2020. You know, he's made the right choices, I think, for the most part. So just put him in the position to win.
Yeah, the problem for Borthwick, in my opinion, is that Borthwick has proven what his game plan is, and it worked for Leicester. They won a Prem. They had a really good November. You're 2 years out from a World Cup. That's not going to work in 2 years because teams will work you out, which is what happens with these sort of teams. The All Blacks got worked out. Ireland have been worked out. At times, South Africa have been worked out, but then they just go back to beating you up. So it's kind of if he doesn't keep adapting and evolving, they'll be in a bit of trouble. That's the only thing I can see that would go wrong with this England team because, as you said, Ryan, the players are there. There is so much world class talent there. But I do think if they don't add layers to the game that they showed in November, they will get found out, and they'll get found out before the World Cup. But I think he's clever enough to know that.
One more note on England: they haven't lost a game since last year against Ireland. So
Yeah,
they went through all
yeah.
those test matches, and Autumn Nations, and through the rest of the Six Nations, they didn't lose. So it'll be really interesting to see how they go into this. Obviously, it's been a long time since November. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good point, Ryan. And winning's a habit, isn't it?
yeah,
It's the same as losing's a habit. I know this is probably our second NFL reference of the pod, Joe, but think about like a team like the Texans or the Patriots this year who just get rolling, or the Broncos. Like they keep getting rolling, and objectively, you would probably not look at any of those teams and think that they're way better than gosh, like one of the more middle road NFL teams. There isn't a huge amount, but that belief of winning tight games is so important. And you look at Leinster, for example. Leinster are probably playing the worst rugby they've played for years in attacking sense, but they just keep squeaking results. And England have that belief now. It's just such a habit, winning and winning. But that's why I wonder when they get punched in the mouth by a team like Ireland, France, or Scotland, who are the three teams who are capable of doing it to them. How do you react? Because if you lose back-to-back games, that's where it starts becoming a slippery slope.
All right. Speaking of teams that are trying to build some winning habits here, it was not long ago. We talked about this quite a bit. It was, I mean, I guess not even 7 years ago that Wales was number one in the world. They were winning Six Nations. They were among favorites to go into the World Cup. Warren Gatland had that thing cooking. Warren Gatland overcooked it the last couple years. Wales really dropped off. Some of the worst seasons in the history of Welsh rugby was the last couple years. New year, new coach. Ryan, what are you liking about this Welsh team?
I think we have to reframe this because rugby is pain, but rugby is also joy, right? So we use this word a lot in America, rebuild. I think they're in a rebuild. I know that there is no rebuild in European sports. You win or you lose. And so I think that we have to put it relative to where the Wales is at. These are the things that are exciting about Wales. They have two uncapped players that they've added to this squad, Louis Hennessy and Gabriel Hamer Webb. I think both of the youth is always exciting. Potential is always exciting. I think they have three awesome home games at the cathedral that is Principality Stadium. They have France, Scotland, and Italy. Those will all be very enjoyable games, whether they lose or not. We really have to reframe this for the Welsh fans. And then I think they win a game for the first time in the last three Six Nations. That's my hot take.
There we go.
I think they beat Italy. I really do.
Yeah, I can see it happening for sure. Definitely. I agree with you. I do think they beat Italy, actually. Even though Italy have got a lot better. Um, the loss of Ant Capowazzo is massive for Italy. And I know we'll get on this, next week when we talk about Italy and Scotland. But I, I'm probably more optimistic about Welsh rugby than most other pundits. I mean, it's a bit of a farce what's going on with their URC sides at the moment, where there's no clarity about who's going to be cut, whatever. It looks like it'll be the Ospreys are gone. I mean, if we're looking at it bluntly, given their ownership group are set to buy Cardiff, but there is a lot of talent in Welsh rugby, and the two debutants you touched on there, Ryan, have been brilliant players. Now, Gabe Hammer-Webb is struggling for a little bit for game time with Leicester, but every time he plays, he's very good. Louis Hennessy was phenomenal for Bath over the last couple of weeks, and he's a real talent. And then when you look at their squad, I mean, they have the bones of a really good team there. The biggest area of weakness for the Welsh, unfortunately, is up front, where I could see them physically getting a little bit bullied by the big teams, because they've been lacking that sort of big enforcer style player for the last little while. And without Telupe Falatau, who's out injured, maybe they don't have as much of a hard hitter coming off at number 8 for them. But then you look at the props that they do have. Thomas Francis is back. He's very experienced, 33 years old. Gareth Thomas has been playing very well. Nicky Smith is scrummaging really, really well for the Tigers. And then you've got Rhys Carre who's been playing well for Sarri. So they do have some good props knocking about. I just think when push comes to shove, they'll struggle against the bigger teams. I could weirdly see them picking off Scotland, and it's just because of my genuine lack of belief in Scotland every year. But I think they will beat Italy. I feel very good about that because they are at home, aren't they? And they came pretty close last year to knocking Italy off. Louis Rees-Zammit, phenomenal form since coming back from the NFL too. He's such an X-factor player. So you look at them, there is plenty of talent. It's just how they get around that set piece battle, because I think they're going to struggle in that department against the sort of big 3-4 teams.
I just envision Philip walking around his house yelling "the Weasel Scots" every time Scotland beats Ireland.
The worst thing is I love Scottish people. I just hate every year reading the same headline. This is the year Scotland win the Six Nations, and they always finish 4th. So maybe they'll finish 3rd this year. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that Wales doesn't have to win a bunch of games. I don't think they have to. I don't even think they have to win one game. I think they just have to show progress.
It's a weird spot for Wales because obviously we talked about that they're losing a club in the URC. We can talk ad nauseum over the next 12 months of who's the URC is going to add, but I think it starts with the national team success to build rugby back up. That's a lot of pressure for Steve Tandy, the new head coach at Wales. What can you tell us about Steve and the type of rugby that Wales is going to start playing?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of promising glimpses in November, especially in attack, right? They scored some really good tries against the All Blacks. They scored some great tries against Argentina. They had a couple of moments against South Africa where they looked good. They squeaked past Japan. But it was just mental errors and one-on-one tackles that they were slipping that would really cost them. I mean, Argentina scored in bunches, and a lot of them were just simple one-on-one tackles. Now, Tandy will fix that as a defense coach. He will be drilling them. And the one thing that always hallmarks great Welsh teams is even if there's a slight lack of talent, they are tough as teak. Like, they are impossible to break down. They don't go away. They are always there. And if he can instill that in this generation of Welsh players, I think that they will go a long way. Now, losing Jack Morgan is such a big loss for them because he's probably their one truly world-class player. Dowie Lake's a brilliant player too, but he's not at the same level as Morgan. And Morgan, when we talk about toughness, he's the guy who leads that side of things. Tommy Raffel isn't in the squad either, which is strange because he's probably the closest like for like, which means you're going to get Harry Deeves, who's a really cool player to watch for the Ospreys, starting at 7 likely for them, or Alex Mann, depending on which way they go there. I think what we're going to see, the biggest, Ryan hit the nail on the head there. It's just showing improvement throughout the Six Nations is what Welsh fans will want to see. A win over Italy is big for them. I think that's the big target. But I think it's defensively they have to start tightening up because they just give up too many easy points. Their attack, when it clicks, is good. They've got lots of X-factor attacking players, but defense is where they have to really focus this championship.
Last question before we do our picks for round 1 here. Realistically, Ryan, Philip, we talked about just showing improvement, but what is the timeline? What are we thinking Wales will be where not where Ireland and France and England are, but like even just at the level of Scotland where you can realistically say they can win every match, but when are they going to be true serious title contenders again? Uh, Maybe not just in the Six Nations, but maybe just even we're talking quarterfinals of the World Cup.
I think 4 or 5 years minimal for me, really, because the problem for them is when you look at the Welsh squad on paper, right? They have a few senior guys, but none of those senior guys would crack into the squads of pretty much really any of the other Six Nations team. When I look at this team on paper, I look at it and I say, okay, Dowie Lake gets into a team, Louis Rees-Zammit gets into a team, and then I stop there. Maybe Daffet Jenkins gets into a team. That's really worrying when you're picking, a Six Nations squad of 30 odd plus players. So the problem for Wales has been they had a golden generation of players, but there was nothing underneath that group, right? So when that group aged out, started retiring, got past their best, there was no one there, and they're going to feel the effects of that until their young guys get enough game time. You look at their squad at the moment. You got Louis Hennessy's 21. Dan Edwards is the big one here. He's 22, the fly half. He's central to them. You got Ellis Mee, Daffet Jenkins. I'm just looking at Eddie James, Joe Hawkins, Mason Grady, Alex Mann, Freddie Thomas possibly will stay there. Blair Murray, Archie Griffin, Harry Deves, and Louis Rees-Zammit. Those are their players under 25. Those are the players they're going to build around. Above that, their midline talent is pretty average, and their older talent is pretty average. So it's a time thing for them, Joe, unfortunately. And as painful as it will be going to 3 teams, I would always prefer to see Wales with 4. Perhaps it's a good thing because you might start getting some of these younger guys back playing together, getting game time, and cutting out players who really shouldn't be having professional contracts. They're really, in blunt terms, progress stoppers. So I think that the short answer for me is I think there's plenty of clever people working within Welsh rugby. There's probably a few changes still needed there, but I think 5 years, and I think they're competitive for the World Cup in 31 in the US. But I think in Australia it's going to be a tough going for them, and the problem for them is the Six Nations is such a war of attrition. It's like a cup final every week because every team has some gripe with or rivalry with their opposition, that there's no easy wins for them. And then it comes to November, and do they want to drop down and play against tier 2 teams? They don't, because it doesn't get the revenue of the gate. So then you're looking at playing the Boks, the All Blacks, Argentina, the Wallabies. It's hard. It's hard going for Wales, but I have belief in 4 or 5 years they'll be back. I just think
I'm not convinced that they could beat Georgia either. Like, to be honest with you, I mean, they probably would, but it wouldn't be like when they played them in the last World Cup. So you drop down and play two tier 2 teams, you might lose.
Yeah, and the proof's going to be in the pudding, right, Ryan? When the Black Lion, we don't want to go too much into it because I know you teased it for another episode, but the Black Lion are rumored to be replacing that Welsh team, and I pretty good authority that is going to be the case. So, Georgia are going to get better because that's going to be a bulk of the Georgian team, and the rest of the Georgian team are playing in the Prem and the top 14. David Ninashvili, who plays for La Rochelle, is a phenomenal winger and fullback. And you look at their forwards are always good. So, yeah, that gap's going to close. I know I said to Joe last week, I'd love to see Georgia get into the Six Nations. It's something people have been calling for. So, why not make it an 8 nations in a couple of years and have Portugal or Spain and Georgia? So,
Yeah, open the gates of rugby.
Yeah, they have to. They have to. This old boys club has to stop if they want to grow the game. Why aren't we running rugby? What's going on?
Why not? Well, next week we're going to talk a little bit about Rugby Europe too. That is the competition that Georgia is in. We'll talk about that next week. Let's pick round 1. England, Wales. Is this going to be the Battle of Shrewsbury, or is this going to be the Battle of Croghan? That's right. I did the history.
Putting us on the spot here, Joe.
Shouts to Bill Shakespeare.
Oh, I think Ryan, you go first. I want to see your pick first. Let's do this.
I mean, I think that England has spoken over the past few weeks, like talking about respecting their opponents, talking about knowing that they're going to play Wales first. I think they're going to crush them. So it'll probably be a launching pad. I mean, this is perfect for England, right? They get to go out. They get to get their legs warm. It is a long tournament, so it's not week to week necessarily, because there is some breaks. But I think they'll win by 40 points, something like that, maybe 30, if Wales can score a little.
Yeah,
I mean, we have to remember that they played South Africa last year and lost 73-0. Now, that was the low point, right? But it's one of the worst losses in their history. So,
yeah.
again, I think there are things to be happy about if you're a Welsh fan. There are things to be excited about. The home games, the youth. They want to show progress, not necessarily wins. They're going to lose this game, though.
Yeah. Right there with you. I think 30 odd points for England.
Yeah, my prediction is we're gonna.
Where they live with them.
My prediction is we're gonna come back and talk about round 1 of the Six Nations, and we're gonna have to start with Harry Pollock doing some weird celebration after a try, and people want to throw him out of rugby because he's disrespectful, and then Philip and I are gonna be like, no, that was awesome what he did. We loved it. Yeah, I think this is England by at least 4 tries. I think that they're the only team that is going to prevent them from winning by at least 4 tries is going to be the team that is the England coaching staff. This sounds really disrespectful for Wales, but this is more respect for England and how good I think they are and where Wales is as a developing team.
Yeah. I think we're all in lockstep here, gents. I think that, I really want Wales to be a good team because the Six Nations is so much better when everybody's good. I just think there's so much work to go. Now, their under-20s are performing better, but it's, 4 or 5 years before I can see them being truly, truly contenders again. Maybe a little shorter, but this year is going to be a real tough one for them because England first up, Ireland away is just not they're not games that they want. So, be a tough one for them.
Yeah, and what you don't want is England winning this game and then and then thinking that getting overconfident. If you're English anyway.
That's what I want them to do.
It's a telltale sign, right?
I want to hear it's coming home after round 1. Even though my dad's from Yorkshire originally, I want to hear them saying it's coming home.
Yeah. I'm ready to hear Swing Low, Sweet Chariot for about 2 hours, that whole match. All right.
Yeah, nothing gets under my skin more than that song when England are flying.
What's that? That's it. That's England. That's Wales. That's the podcast. Look, we have rugby streaming on Flo Rugby still this week. We've got our club rankings. They're coming out Wednesday. Don't miss them. This podcast is probably coming out Wednesday. So watch this podcast, read the rankings, see who's the number 1 team. Our match of the week is Lions Bulls. That is going to be an awesome game Saturday morning. Do not miss that match. Catch us on Flo Rugby on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. We're going to have more on the Super Rugby preview there. Philip, Ryan, watch lots of rugby this week. Next week, we talk about Scotland and Italy. We wrap up our Six Nations preview, and then we get ready for the Six Nations. It's going to be really fun. Until then, lads, we'll see you next week.